Okay, here we are with those images that I took in Photoshop. I took 3 different photos. A few of them I took purposely skewed extremely, and one I tried to take straight on. Now, I tend to be a little lazier these days with taking the photo perfectly straight on, and what I mean by perfectly straight on is if I were to use my grid on my phone, I would make sure in the viewfinder of the phone that these lines on the grid of the cardboard tabletop would be perfectly straight and aligned, so that maybe I'm not going to be able to edit the photos and fix the skew problem. This one I did a very extreme skewing here, and I'll show you how I do that. Now, disclaimer, I am by no means a Photoshop expert. I only learned the tools that I need to get the job done for my pattern making life. Now, I'll go over here to crop, and here is a perspective tool. Now, that perspective tool is turned on. You can see the little icon of the cursor has changed, and now I'm going to try, and as carefully as possible, go over here to the first cross mark I did, drag over to the second cross mark, third, and I think you might be able to see where this is going. And now it's going to fix this whole thing skewed. But now I'm going to zoom in. I just zoom rotated, Control Z. I was hoping to zoom in on there, but I guess I can't. If anybody knows how I can zoom in once I set these, please let me know. I'll just put this back. Now I'll hit enter, and I can live with that. Now, I don't think the camera created this skew up here in the top. I think my cardboard was actually a little wobbly, but that's okay. This is close enough. Between what I have here and what I have with the measurements that I took by hand, I'll be just fine. I do want to go ahead and check a few of these others. I want to see what happens if I zoom now on these cross marks and then see, can I travel over when I try to do that perspective? Because that would make life a lot easier. So now I'm popping here, and let's see, does it travel with me? Aha! Okay, I've never done that before. So I feel like I can be more precise in this situation. And as you can imagine, that's why it makes a difference to have these little markings here before you proceed. Because, oh shoot. Because now by working so zoomed in, that certainly is a big help. I wonder if I could have just used, right now I'm doing Control minus. I wonder if I could have simply done that and panned around when I was editing the other one. So they save this as a file that is the exact width that you want. So to do that, you are going to go to Image, Image Size, and you can see right now it has a resolution of 72 inches. I mean 72. I don't know why, but it does. I thought it was going to be 300 because I thought the resolution on my camera was that high, but I guess not. But I like 150, and we already said the width was 25, and the height is, now here's something interesting. Since right now the width and height are locked, meaning whatever I change the one or the other to, it is going to automatically change the matching scale to the other one. So what this tells me is that on this 25 wide and 16.129, it tells me I am 1/8 of an inch off on my top to bottom right here. So what I can do with that information is I can either go back and crop this just a little bit. You can see down here I was kind of a little past the line, but up here it's a little different. A 1/16 of an inch, or I'm sorry, an 1/8 of an inch isn't a ton, but it's some. So your two choices, you can either crop it again to get a little more precise to where this would be 16 inches just from the image alone, or you can turn off the connector here and you can force this to be 16 inches, and that's going to shrink the whole thing down by that 16 inches evenly, and you'll have the proportions that you want. I'm going to go ahead and just shrink it down by that 1/8 of an inch so that it shrinks the whole thing down proportionately. Truth be known, it was probably off a 1/16 of an inch here, and maybe it was still a 1/16 of an inch off in my scaling when I had it in a skewed perspective. So over a whole 16 inches, that 1/8 of an inch is negligible. And also I'm using my judgment that I know that I'm working kind of from a puffy, wrinkly garment that's laid on a table. But I also know that I have the specifications that I took by hand that I'm going to be matching anyway. And on top of that, the new garment is going to be in a different fabric, go through a different sewing process, and it's not going to match down to the 16th or 18th of an inch anyway. It'll be a new development with new revisions. So I'm just going to pick my battles here and not get too OCD about it. But I just want you to know what the logistics are and what your options are in this situation. So now I have changed that, and now I'm going to save this and I'm going to open it in CLO3D. Here we are in CLO3D. Now my environment is light, so that might look different than yours. Yours might be dark, which is what it is by default. I like the lighter view. Now this is the 3D window. We don't need that right now, so I'm just going to bring this all the way over here, and I'm going to zoom out. Now remember, our image was 16 by 25. It was 25 wide. So in order to bring in that image and trace around it, I'm going to create a pattern piece. And that's over here. I'm going to create a rectangle, and I need it to be a little bit bigger than the image. So I'm just going to tap on the screen to get the pop-up. And for width, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to say 20, and just for fun, I'm going to say 30. And we're going to click OK. Actually, that's the wrong orientation, so I'm going to bring it that way. And now I'm going to zoom and pan here. Now this, even though I'm calling it a pattern piece and I'm using it kind of like a piece of paper that I'm going to trace on, it still gives a representative piece of cloth in the 3D window. And the only reason why that's notable to me right now is if I accidentally hit the space bar, it's going to start treating this as a piece of fabric that it needs to process with gravity. It's not a big deal that it's just one piece right now, but even when I have gravity turned off, meaning the simulation, I call it gravity because I feel like it turns gravity on, I feel like it does slow my system down because it's calculating all of the properties, the physics of this piece of fabric. So what I do is I go over here to my piece, I right click, and I'm going to say deactivate pattern and sewing. You can deactivate just the pattern, but I don't want to think about it, so I just always do pattern and sewing. So now nothing happens, it's ignoring this. I could hide this if I didn't want to look at it. You might not need to do this if you are disciplined enough to not be hitting your space bar, which is the shortcut for turning on simulation. But for some reason, I'm always hitting the space bar, so that's why I do that. All right, so we have what I'm going to call our big pattern piece to use as a sheet of paper. I need to bring that image in. So what I'm going to do over here in our toolbar, it's the one that looks like a t-shirt, and it's just the t-shirt by itself, and you see it kind of has a little graphic there on the shirt. That will give you a pop-up to find the file, the image file that you want to bring in. So just go through your usual Explorer or file folder system, select the file you want, that image that we cleaned up and had ready to go, and then choose open. Once you choose open, you're going to get your mouse cursor with a length and width to show you how far away you're moving one edge to or another from the edge of the paper. So I'm just going to start kind of in the upper, I don't know if it's setting the center. I think I usually do the center. It's going to have a pop-up that shows you the width and height. That's correct. We already know about that. And I'm just going to click center here. Yeah, that's fine. So that put that there in the center, and now I'm going to be able to digitally trace around this to get our pattern pieces. Now I'm going to kind of trace the lines that will represent both the front and the back, and I'm just establishing a basic block right now. Now that I have my image brought in, it is life size. The 16 by 25, I placed it into a pattern piece just so that I can work with this image. I'm going to trace around it to create additional pattern pieces, and I don't want this white default fabric here. With my object browser and property editor turned on, meaning they're not hidden in the side here, they are pulled out, I'm going to create a new fabric, and so that's fabric 2. I'm going to go down here to the color. I'm going to change it to something neutral, apply and close, and I'm going to change the opacity here in a minute, and you're going to see why. I'm going to create a new pattern piece on top, tracing over it. So I'm going to choose the polygon here, and I could even be kind of sloppy here. I'm just moving my cursor, doing a quick tap to lay it down, a quick tap. If I do a slow tap, or I tap and hold even for just a moment, it's, instead of it creating a straight point, it's going to create an angled or curved point, which is similar to how it works in Adobe Illustrator, but for whatever reason that's very foreign to me, probably because I'm used to nerdy CAD environments. So the quick tap and then doing the adjustments and adding curves is better for me. But if you're an Illustrator user, by all means use the tap hold curve situation. I'm not there yet. But now you see, since I drew this polygon, I can't see what's going on underneath here. So I'm going to go to my fabric 2, which is what this represents, and I'm going to go find the opacity by scrolling down, and here is opacity. I'm going to turn that down quite a bit so I can clearly see through this. Now you might be asking, well, why didn't I use the first fabric and turn down the opacity and just use all the same fabric properties? Of course, if I turn down my opacity, then I wouldn't be able to see the image because it would wash it out. I'm pretty sure that's still the case. There's always a lot of changes and updates to the software regularly, so if I don't test things out, oh, that's very interesting. It did wash out the opacity of the main fabric that I started with, but it kept my image nice and sharp. That is good to know. So really, I didn't have to go through this second step anymore of creating a different fabric. So I did what I did, but you know that you don't have to do it that way anymore. All right, so now let's go and fine tune as we work our way around. And it's kind of that situation when I was in Photoshop and I was fine tuning after being sloppy. Now I hit my Z shortcut so I can edit these points here. Oops, I accidentally hit spacebar. So I'm not going to move this one too far out because I know the way this was turned under and the pocket winging out, it needed to be that way. Now I'm going to take my V tool, and now it's turned to a cursor, and I'm just going to kind of curve this out a little bit and hit Z. I'm going to put this one over here, and this is going to be a straight point up into about here. So I'm going to X, think of X marks the spot. I'm going to drop a new control point there, hit Z, and now I'm bringing this perfectly straight line right here. Now I can go back to my V tool and draw in here, and that's that curve here. Now we do have an additional curve that's happening here, and for the back, representing the back crotch. So I would actually be better off bringing all of this over here and drawing my outer crotch curve. And because I'm going to use this tracing as double duty, meaning I'm going to be drawing my front and my back, and then I'm going to extract them as two different pattern pieces. So I'm going to imagine that if my back crotch is here, which we can see it clearly is, that I'm probably correct in the amount of curve that I currently have right here. And I'm going to draw an internal line to represent the front. Now, even though this is wobbly, we're going to keep this as a straight line because we're going to unfold this at some point to extend our back crotch. I think our back crotch is even more curved there. And this little lumpy part, the fabric for the other pant leg kind of curved out there, so I'm not going to worry about it. And again, we're going to be auditing this with the specs that I took by hand, and then even then, the new garment, this is just a starting point for a new pattern design. It's going to be adjusted a bit as well. All right, so now I have the perimeter of my back shorts, and I'm going to draw in these internal lines that are going to represent the front panel of the shorts, and that's going to be this second button here. And I'm going to start here, drop here, and this will move with me. And again, I don't have to be perfect, we know this. And right here, I'm going to drop down. And I'm going to keep everything else the same here, but I would like to have a reminder line, so to speak, about my pocket opening, just so that I don't forget. And now let's clean up the curves with V. Something like that. And once we start extracting these pieces, we'll refine even more. This just gives us a starting point. I'm going to move this over. I'm going to move it over some more. This does seem like it might have a slight curve to it. I personally, even if it didn't, I would like that because I like my hems to be a little more squared off. And by squared off, you know that I mean more of a right angle. All right, now I'm going to select this pattern piece with the A tool. That's the top one here. And I'm not going to move it. I want to keep it intact with my image just in case I ever want to come back. So I'm going to go Control C, Control V, and I'm going to plop that there. I'd like to rotate it, and maybe I'd like to keep my bottom anchored straight. I can tell already by the grid that it's not straight, but I would like it to be. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to tap on this with the A key. I'm going to right click and I'm going to rotate it along the X axis, meaning I want it horizontally to align here. So now that just rotated it to where it was perfectly on the horizontal. Next, I'm going to copy this again, Control C, Control V, and it'll plop it down. But what I really wanted is I wanted a mirrored image of this. So I could flip this now, but I'm kind of lazy. So I'm going to take this and do the Control C, Control R will give me the reverse. So each of these are going to be edited. Now, normally I work with my front at the left, center front of anything to the left, and my center back to the right. Some brands prefer the center front to be on the right-hand side and work from right to left. So in some cases it won't matter at all, but I usually do it a certain way just to be consistent. Now, what's the quickest way that I can trim this excess off of this being considered the front? I'm going to try and select all of these, right click, cut. Let's see if that actually worked. Yes, it did. Woohoo. And then for the back, I do not need, yes, I do need. Oops. So remember, our back needed to flip out here so that we had this extended. Okay? So this kind of unfolds over here. So what I'm going to do, can I delete just this point? I am going to divide that internal point so I can independently delete this. Now I'm going to go back to my internal line, tap, tap, escape now, and I'm all the way to the end here. Now I'm going to select, using my Z, this internal line here, and I can right click. That went away. We don't like that. Try that again. Right click. Okay, you really need to have your cursor on the line. What I find so interesting is when I'm not narrating what I'm doing, I'm just working on autopilot, I do what needs to be done without even thinking about it. But when I'm narrating to you and thinking about how to verbally explain what to do next, for some reason I start getting lost. It's very interesting. So anyway, we highlighted this, we did a right click, making sure we're hovered on that line, and now we're going to mirror it somewhere here. Duplicate as a mirrored internal line. And we're going to click that there. One thing that's interesting is that if I try to draw an internal line outside of the pattern piece, even though I'm connected, I usually cannot do that. But for some reason, the mirrored is cooperative. Now I'm going to use my A key to select this whole piece. I'm going to right click, clone as reference line. Now you can see if I grab a point, I still have an outline of the pattern piece. And I wonder if I delete this, I'll still have it. Yes, I can still delete that additional line that I had there. And now it'll give me an opportunity, oops, going to zoom in here. Now it'll give me an opportunity to extend my pattern piece to that outline. And really, since I have that now, I don't need this internal line. Now, I will not be able to selectively delete any of these cloned reference lines individually. So I can delete the entire reference line once I do not need it anymore. But I need it right now, so it stays. I would like to keep this point for a moment, so I'm going to hit X, drop down a point, hit Z, and I'm going to extend it right here. I will turn that into a curved point shortly. And when it comes to the bottom now, we're going to take this, and I know this extended down a little bit, but I'm not going to do that. I'd like to just keep it a straight line. I probably will bring this in just a little bit when it comes time to kind of square off, or at least subtly square off where the hem is going to go. And right here, I'd like this to kind of gently curve a little bit more, so I'm going to select that, right click, convert to curve point. I'm just converting it only. So see how it made that little curve right there to kind of smooth it out. Now I'm going to hit my V key, and I'm just going to use my arrows to just bring it up just a little bit. And I believe my arrows are set to a 1/16 of an inch. Let's find out. Somewhere, just anywhere on the grid here, just right click and go to grid properties. It looks like there's an F12 keyboard shortcut. And my 2D arrow key movement is 0.062, which is a 1/16 of an inch. Technically, a 1/16 of an inch really would be 0.0625. And I can go into my properties, my user preferences, and I could set it to where I can go 4 decimals out. I thought I already did that, but I don't see that showing up here. But it's possible that those decimals going 4 out might not apply to the grid properties. Maybe it applies to just the grading module, but I'm going to look into that, because having it exactly a 1/16 of an inch is important to me for a few different reasons, but that'll be another time. Okay, zooming out here, we want to true up a little bit. Now we know that the side seams are going to match perfectly, so I'm not going to worry about that. I want to make sure that our inseams match perfectly, and it looks like they probably don't when we did this flip out here. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the reference lines here, so I'm going to right click, delete reference line, and now I'm going to check these two. I can quickly compare the two lines because there's no points in between here to here, so I hit, oops, didn't mean to do that. I'm going to hit Shift Z, which turns on my lines. This is 9.545, this is 9.66, so they don't match up. They're very, very close, but they still don't match up. I want them to match up, so I'm going to turn off my lines. I'm going to, I have my Z tool turned on. I'm going to select both points. I'm going to right click. I'm going to match up, match measurement. I'm going to match one to the other. Now it's showing you right away I can match to the short, or to whatever the shortest one was, or whatever the longest one was. And I'm going to choose the longer one. Now I'm going to add it up here, but if I want it to add it to make the extension to the bottom here, I would say I want it to go in the end direction. But that's not what I want to do. I want it to be at the other end. And sometimes you just need to just intuitively decide what you want. If I did want to balance it both at both ends, I would just choose that. One thing that I would really enjoy that maybe I can ask CLO3D team if it's something they can add. When I'm matching up two lines because I want them to be the same measurement, I think it would be enjoyable if when I select the two and it tells me the measurement, right now it's telling me the measurement of the long, or I can switch, it'll tell me the measurement of the short. I think it would be enjoyable or helpful if, depending, whichever one I select, that's fine, it gives me that literal measurement. I wish it would tell me the difference. I wish it would just say, hey, you're a 1/16 of an inch off, or there's a difference of 1/4 of an inch off. I think that would be handy to know on the fly. All right, so we know that we're going to match to the longest length, and we're going to click OK. All right, so we know that that is trued up. So now we have a block for a front and a back. The only other thing I want to do is I want to pretend that I'm sewing these together to see if I have a nice transition here at the top. To do that, before I do that, I did make sure both were rotated, but I want to go ahead and establish my grain lines now. I just want to make sure this is rotated on the x-axis. I can't remember if I did that with the block as a whole or if I did it with one piece or another. All right, now we're going to establish our grain lines. That's the piece of fabric that's here. These are sideways, so I'm just going to tap on this and I'm going to align it on the y-axis. I don't know what that did. And this one I'm selecting, and same thing, the y, tap off, just hit your A or your Z and you're out of there. So my grain line is set. So now I want to sew or walk, not sew, I want to walk this piece and align it to the edge so that I can simulate what would happen on paper if these are being sewn together. So that's the walk tool here. I'm going to go here to here and I'm just going to crawl. I'm going to right click and I'm going to move it to the intersection. So I do not like this sharp angle right here, so I need to decide how I want to handle that. I like slightly curved hemlines. A lot of times in production that doesn't happen, but I tend to like doing it that way. So I can also see, am I working at right angles here? So this is not squared off at a 90-degree angle. I'm going to see if I can clean that up just a little bit. 97 is fine. We know that humps out too much. I'm going to bring this up a little bit. This right here, 92, that's close enough. But this bothers me here. It's probably not a whole lot, but I'm going to bring it down. So that's about 3/16 of an inch. I'm going to go back over here. I'm going to hump it up slightly. And this is probably taking perfectionism a little too far. I can live with that, I think. Maybe, all right. That's good enough there. And if we wanted to, we can smooth this out just a little bit right there. for that back piece, and that's good. So these join together quite nicely. Now I can move this back on the grain line, reset along grain line, and I have those two. Alright, so I feel pretty good about this. It would need a waistband if I was just literally going off of the tracing on the garment, but I additionally took measurements by hand, and so now I will need to edit all of this based on my hand measurements to clean it up a little bit. That's enough for this video on working with this from the tracing. I will do the next video to show how I edit this according to the measurements that I took by hand.